All right, I will call the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please, Kel.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Kyle Jacob.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson. Here. Dale Schmitz.
Here.
And Sue Krieger.
Here. Stand for the flag of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Action on the agenda. Need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Dale.
Second.
Second by Kyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Action on the minutes from the May 12th.
I'll motion to approve that too, because there wasn't much there.
I'll second.
That was pretty easy to read that.
Under discussion, I saw one error in there under 5A. The box that says what the vote was, the ayes part of it is missing. It just says second, and then it doesn't have any of the ayes listed. If I'm explaining that right.
Yeah, you are.
And
That's
the funny thing
interesting
is,
because that just is like not even something I can.
well, and the funny thing is, it's the same thing in the finance personnel, same exact spot. The ayes are missing, so I don't. Or maybe it's something in the program.
Yeah, I mean, that's 5A.
5A,
Yeah.
so it's an action on the minutes one. Results, mover, seconder, and no ayes.
You were observing.
Yeah, it caught me off guard because I was like, wait a minute, what the heck?
Wow.
So maybe it's something in the program because finance personnel is exactly the same spot, exact
Isn't
same
that
thing.
interesting?
Yes. Because when I was looking at them, I'm like, did I see that in like that, or was I wrong? Was that really just finance personnel? So it seems
Well, and
it's
no
simple.
wonder you noticed it then. If
I
it's
know,
at
yeah.
Two different meetings.
Two different meetings, yeah.
There's probably just a button that was missed
That's
to
what I was
hit
thinking.
push, mark all for 4, and then hit save. They noticed it. And maybe the system didn't save correctly, but I think I have it fixed on the system.
Nice.
All right, so with that correction, then is everybody okay with that correction on the motion and second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Back here. 6, items for discussion and possible action. Item A is presentation discussion on pedestrian bicycle comprehensive plan community survey results. And Devin is here from Brown County. Thank you for coming back. He is going to do a PowerPoint and go through it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll gonna provide an overview. Not gonna get into every little detail, but then if we want to discuss or there are questions, we can dive into that. So you can advance. Thanks. Yeah, so this was available from the end of April till first week in June. 141 surveys were submitted. Just for context, and I've told Rex this, for last year I'd done plans for Bellevue and Alloway. Alloway had a little bit more in terms of responses, but Bellevue had less. So I think, where this fell was kind of what was to be expected. So yeah, that's good. Fewer items for the interactive maps, which is kind of how that goes too. It's, I don't know, a little more technology involved, and it's, I guess it's something that we offer again as another option, but kind of the bulk of what we're going to get is from the survey. But I'll go into those things. Oh yeah, and I guess I was just going to say, 2/3 of the responses were people both walk and bike in Ashwaubenon, which I guess is to be expected when you're taking the survey, but it was, I guess, good to see both. So in your packet, if you want to follow along or look more closely, that would be starting on page 7. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that works. So the question number 2, it's only in the packet. I didn't put it up here just for all the numbers, but the short of it is, from the survey, people mostly walk in Ashwaubenon for enjoyment or exercise, and then kind of secondary going parks or trails. Fewer what we'll call utilitarian trips, but not necessarily but it's not happening. You know, it looks like people are doing some things also, you know, running errands and going to shopping or dining, but not as much as the enjoyment and exercise. And then, yeah, with work, transit, and school, that's kind of the lowest. But again, we don't really get into the reasons for that, just that's how people responded. As far as question 3 and 4 go, so those were, and I should say again, or just reiterate, this first group is just the walking only questions, and then we'll get to the biking, so just saying that. In terms of destinations to be prioritized, again, the highest one kind of flipped where the highest are at the bottom on that top chart, but parks and trails, the top answer, residential neighborhoods, second highest, and then actually schools, third highest. And I should say, again, if it's not obvious here, these were all like ranked choices, and so they're weighted results. So the higher your rank, the more points it got. So that's how that was calculated. In terms of obstacles, the highest was lack of sidewalks and or paths and trails, and then traffic, street crossings, and then the last two are a little bit lower compared to those top 3. For most important improvements, that would make it more convenient to walk. You know, again, highest increasing separation between motor vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles, and then completing network gaps, and then kind of closely behind that is improving crossings. It's kind of 2 answers, but the gist of it is crossings, and that you'll see that too as we get into some of the other answers.
Now, these questions, Devin, are typical, like when you talked about what Alloway did and what Bellevue did there.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a specifically tailored survey for Ashwaubenon. I mean,
Well, it's a little of both. I mean, we did kind of tweak it a little for when I was setting this up, but it is still kind of a general format of what we would ask or have asked for other communities too. So again, you know, the challenge with that always is like, you know, you don't want to be just giving the answers, but a lot of times the main issues, I think you can still sort of parse out kind of before almost. Yeah.
I think you have the returns because you had the options.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than them trying to give you their own words.
Right, yeah. And I will get into that too, because we did have that option also, like what those were. And then, so this one, so initially in the packet, you just have the answers. This is on page 4, and then continuing. And I don't know how much, if you all read through this before or not, but after sitting on this over the weekend, I decided just to summarize it to maybe make it a little easier to see. And again, just to kind of highlight what was said, but the big thing, probably not a surprise, Ashland was kind of the top answer. And I should say, and if you read it, not so much that Ashland is where people want to walk, but more where they want to cross. Again, probably not a big surprise. The others, though, you know, and this was, again, trying to assign what people were responding with. You know, you have the mall area, and then Oneida Street was mentioned specifically in and around the mall, and then there was also just some Oneida Street answers. I probably could have put those 2 together, and kind of with all that, you know, you might almost say Oneida Street and the commercial area in the mall might be the other top.
What do you think the challenge is, since we've got sidewalks on Oneida Street on both sides of the street?
Yeah, I think that one, I don't know, that one feels a little more tricky, and I don't know if it's as much just getting across. Well, yeah, both getting across and then the feeling of traffic adjacent to it. And yeah, I don't know probably what the best answer is there because again, that's all built already.
Well,
But-
the south end doesn't have sidewalks once you get past.
No, but
Hanson, the south end on the east side of the road has no sidewalks, so
he's talking
getting to
more of the
Perkins.
commercial area, so I would assume that was the mall, that's why.
Yeah, more, well, yeah.
There's commercial down on that side.
Right, yeah, there's restaurants and everything down in south end too.
I think, and I am completely speculating and I'm correlating some other responses within the survey, but I suspect that there's two issues. One, the crossing issue, because it seems like crossing major
There's 6
corridors is a pretty substantial barrier, whether it be Ashland, Packerland, or even Oneida, especially in areas that don't have a lighted intersection, or maybe the pet pads aren't working correctly, and so you're not getting that timed release to cross. The other thing that people, I think oftentimes, unless it's clearly stated that we're talking only about public infrastructure, and even then they don't necessarily know what public infrastructure is, the interior aspects of the mall area for pedestrian movement is pretty limiting.
Yeah.
And then especially with the outbuilding that has happened over the last 5 or 10 years, to go from Chick-fil-A's to Dirt to Dave & Buster's to Hy-Vee to Steinhoffel's, because that's your route of shopping that you plan to do. You're like, I'm going to park it and forget about it and then just walk between those 4 or 5 destinations. It can be a little daunting, and I don't know that the public correlates that as being, well, that's not the village's responsibility, that's the private development. And so there's that too.
Yeah, and I think I know somewhere in there was some specific things about that area or the interior. And again, like you said, it's to the average person, it all appears to be public space or the public realm. Right? So there's that difference.
So Devin, I had a question. I started reading these. So do you have the ability to like pick out a word that would, so there's commonality here, right? There's people that answered this and said, it's whatever street we want to pick, Oneida Street. So we could find out how many people responded to Oneida Street versus, I don't know if you can do a search like that in a PDF.
But yeah, so I had it in Excel, and so
Yep,
there'd be ways to
to manipulate that.
there. What I have here is the old-fashioned way, which is me read the answers.
Well, that's what, yeah,
And-
a lot of work.
and actually chart it out. But I do, yeah, and it is a lot of work, but sometimes it's, I guess, to really like kind of
Understand it better.
understand it, you almost, and that's ultimately why I ended up going with charting that out, I guess, for lack of a better term, just to get a better feel for what people are saying in this specific question.
Well, I think what a lot of people have a problem too on the streets, when you're riding your bikes on the sidewalk, if you're on the sidewalk, all the cars turn in, nobody sees you. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but what are you gonna do about it?
And it's driveways. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
I think that was a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Don't ride your bike on a night.
Right in the road,
But even on the road,
right in the
Right
road. You're a
in
lot
the road
safer.
all the
You're a
time.
lot safer.
you're
Probably
probably
are
right.
You're
safer.
a lot safer. I
Probably
can give you
are.
all the stats for it if you want it. But
Yeah, I
yes,
would
you're
say-
a lot safer.
Probably. You're
Prefer
safer
to
from
drive on the
that
road
than
than
being
ride
on
on
the
the sidewalk
cars.
or the trail.
You're more visible. Yeah. The cars are gonna see you. You're in a predictable position. When you're on the sidewalk and you're biking, especially if you're going fast, and especially if you're going counterflow, you are not a threat to that motor vehicle, and they're not gonna look, because if you're a motor vehicle driver and you're turning right at an intersection, you're just looking to your left. There's no conflict coming from your right, so you don't look.
Yep.
Right.
And you can pull right out in front of that bicyclist or even a pedestrian that's walking and going counterflow on that sidewalk. So that's why it's a risk for especially bicyclists or an electric scooter going fast on the sidewalk, which it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be out there at all.
Yeah, so that, and then, Packerland, I think that was also kind of a combination of
way
both
back.
crossing, but then kind of at the ends too. And obviously that then gets into some jurisdictional stuff. But yeah, we need that
I
out.
could see that because I was just out there yesterday and you try to cross at I think I'm
Rush hour time?
Yes, but what's the far end road that crosses?
Comanche? Are you talking?
No, towards
Skylar?
just before Schneider.
Oh,
Skylar or
Skylar.
Wabi.
Skylar.
Is that Skylar?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Terrible, I live there, I can't remember. I don't remember a lot of names. But, I mean, I think somebody mentioned, they got all the signs there for pedestrian crossing. There ain't no way you're crossing that till traffic stops.
Well, those
It's
signs
gone.
are very minimal. There's
Yeah,
nothing
Oh my
in the
gosh.
road. The signs are the most minimal thing you could possibly do, and that needs more there if you're gonna make a safe crossing. Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, keep going.
Yeah, so then I think that, yeah, moves us into the bicycle section. Again, in the packet, you have the answers, just generally broken down, again, mostly exercise / enjoyment, and going to parks and trails were the highest reasons for biking. Again, there's a little bit more for shopping, dining, schools. So other reasons, it's not just, again, solely for enjoyment. In terms of obstacles, again, kind of the same as the walking part, lack of paths / trails, traffic speeds, and then on-street facilities, kind of the highest level ones. In terms of making it easier, what we came up, the highest again is completing the network, redeveloping the network, and then there's also the increasing separation between motor vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles. Yeah, those are definitely the highest, but some answers for all the other things too. In terms of where for biking, and did the same thing here, broke it down based on answers. And I should say too, there were answers or responses that had multiple answers. So I just tallied all those in here. So that's why there might be more here than what actual responses were. Again, Oneida Street / the commercial area, and then Ashland, again, the crossing. In this one, especially though, there were more answers related to the stadium / Titletown area. And I think, it seemed like some of that's really both, I think, getting across Ridge and getting around those areas, especially. So again, I think there probably, well, it seems like could be some more connectivity around there, but I think we'll dive into that more, going forward. Oh yeah, and then Ashwaubenon was also kind of a high answer too, and probably again might have as much to do with getting from west to east and getting over there.
Yeah, back and forth.
It's just a long ways away from everybody.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's also true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that part. Any questions or comments?
Some of these pages are not in here, but this,
So
can you supply that?
Yeah, so I can,
Some
yeah,
point,
the chart, the two charts that are up here weren't in here. And
Yeah.
again, I made them after the fact.
Okay,
But I can definitely provide those if you want.
pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And really, again, that's the longer, after I went and was looking through this again, it's like, it'd probably be helpful to
Yeah.
actually show that. So that's, should have done it earlier, but.
No, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And then the question 12, so this was the more open-ended one, what opportunities do you see to improve walking and biking in Ashwaubenon? And again, this is where I just went through and tallied things, and again, trying to make things into generalized categories. So as best I could, hitting kind of what I think people were saying. Again, the highest is better street crossings. And then education and enforcement was kind of the second highest. And again, I think as you're mentioning, just education around both for users, drivers, but even some for walking and biking,
Yep.
an opportunity there. And then, yeah, a variety of other things, but those were definitely the biggest ones. And then the public input maps. Well, and actually, you know what? Sorry, I didn't put a slide on this, but right before the maps, so on page 15, there's just a table. This was just where people took the survey from, or identified what street they lived on. So just if you want to see kind of where the answers came from. And with a little bit of homework too, it looked like there were just a handful that came from outside here, but I think you could probably count those on one hand. And then, yeah, moving to the public input maps. The first one is, so these were points, and people could identify just specific locations, like that's a point. And we had some pre-populated fields in the selected description. I don't remember, I'd have to think, there were like 5 or 6 different answers that people could choose from like a drop-down menu. And then the submitted comment was just write whatever you want. So with these, we didn't have, I guess, specific answers for all of them. I think, just looking at kind of where they are, you can probably sort of figure out what the comment might be. And again, these are where I think what they could see as places needing improvement. So I think you can infer that. So that, yeah, the map on the left up on the screen is the public input points. The map on the right is the second one, and that's where people can just draw like a segment. And I mislabeled the table. So the second table on page 17 should be segments, not points. I missed that or added it in and labeled it the same thing. But again, mostly it looked like these were people identifying some either where sidewalks where there aren't or where there could be. And then I think there was one maybe where our data wasn't quite caught up with what was that? One of those. Oh yeah, number 2. Yeah, over by Title Town, sidewalk there that I don't think we had shown on the map. So I'm going to update that. So that is kind of what we got with that. And I guess with that, I'll just say, are there any other questions or comments just on the survey stuff specifically?
Devin, I just had a question. So the mapping part of it, I just went out there and did some, but I even struggled to do it a little bit. Would there be any value to get the map out to us on the committee again and have us look at it again, and then maybe at our next meeting have everybody in, not even that you have to do it, but just look at it, and then as a group we could look at it and go, okay, these are things that I have, this is things I had, to get maybe some more input, and then maybe Sue's seeing something that I'm not, and I'm saying, oh yeah, that I can understand that now or whatever, and do it like almost like a workshop kind of thing for us to really sit and look at that and see if we come up with some more points or more information that way. What do you guys think of that? I mean, I just think some things maybe didn't get put on there because people weren't as comfortable doing it. And maybe as a group, we could kind of go through it and do it that way and think about it a little bit more. Or if that pushes it back too far, what your timeline is and where you're at.
So I guess we can get into that, or maybe we can tie that in. So what I was gonna go to next, and then I think we can add that on kind of as part of the conversation. So I add these last 2 slides, I just took top issues straight from the current plan. So this is nothing new. I haven't modified anything. This is from the current plan. And that's, tying what we learned here, or what we got from feedback and looking at these, and I guess the question is, are the top issues still accurate? And do these still align with what the survey showed, or are there some different things that maybe came up? And I guess my first take in looking at these, I would say they all seem to be pretty much, I would say, the same. I don't think, maybe 7, 8, and 9. I guess I have a little less of a feel for those, and that's almost more just what village staff and you all living here, if you feel like those still are applicable. And I guess that's some feedback I'd be looking for specifically if those are still top issues. But I kind of think everything else still seems pretty relevant. And I know I'm kind of throwing all this at you if you need to look at it for a moment or digest it.
And I presume that number 1 addresses that concern, but it seemed like in the survey results, it was crossing major corridors that was the major obstacle.
Yeah,
So I'm assuming that's kind of covered under top issue number 1, but that seems to be. When I originally read 1, I'm thinking of major highways like 41, 172, kind of segmenting the community into 4 quadrants. But in reality, it's not only those, because there aren't underpasses or overpasses or whatever. It's also the major corridors like Ashland, Packerland.
Mm-hmm.
Ashland is a major obstacle because there's a lot of points of destination along the waterfront, from Ashwaubenon Park to the museum to the trail.
Oh, there's a lot of people who live over there too.
There is,
And
yeah,
there's a whole neighborhood.
Yeah, there's a lot of people over there.
So taking those neighborhoods that are on that side of Ashland, east of Ashland, connecting them to the commercial area.
get to the west side,
Yeah, they have a good access to Ashwaubenon.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but then getting over to the mall or getting
Exactly,
there into the village is a little tougher, so they get the.
So I don't know if
Yeah,
that just needs to be tweaked to, or an added issue. So it's not only the major corridors, the interstate systems and the state trunk highway systems, but just those at-grade crossing areas over major corridors seems to be a pretty limiting factor.
Yeah, I think, thanks for saying that, because I think that almost could be an additional issue. And again, seemed like kind of the top thing that came up, and especially if it's sort of related but slightly different from just the highway separation. I think we can definitely consider that another top issue.
I think items 8 and 9 are still relevant today.
Okay.
From a staff point of view. I think those are certainly relevant. I think there's certainly still kind of past attitudes regarding sidewalks, particularly in residential areas, that will prohibit our ability to make those true connections, those points of destination. And then because they weren't put in at the time of initial development, the costs to install those facilities as retrofit are pretty challenging. And because of that, you might not get that equal treatment. You're going to pick and choose the easy battles, even though they may not necessarily be the best locations. What I would say to number 7 is, this plan and the top issues that are under the current plan dates back to really kind of the original plan, which is 2007-ish, 2008 was when the original plan was adopted-ish,
Somewhere around there, I
2008.
think, yeah.
And then it's been updated, and maybe that issue hasn't been resolved, but we don't have a whole lot of space for new development in the village, but what we're seeing now is a redevelopment. And so we can incorporate design standards in the new development, but then what does it connect to? Because the rest of the community is not connected. So that's always the struggle, and I think it creates a difficult political challenge to some degree for the board to say, well, we're going to require it here, but what does it connect to? Not, understanding that over time there will be that connection, but it's really easy to say, yeah, you don't need to do it because it's not going to connect it unless you've kind of planned that out. So I think not so much the pace of development, it's more of the conscientious decision on redevelopment. And are you going to incorporate these into design, even though it may not visibly make a lot of sense?
Well, in our ordinances now that we've worked on here for commercial development, we require sidewalks, require bike racks, and some of the development that's come in that has not been there. They aren't putting the bike racks in, not requiring the sidewalks, which is in our ordinance to do, so we have that. In our residential developments now, they require sidewalks on both sides of the street. Again, that came from this committee to the village board to approve that. So we do have that, so that's changed a bit in, the new residential development for sure. And I know what you're saying, Joel, you get this development and, well, there's no sidewalk there, but you gotta start somewhere. Start a path, the path starts and only goes and someone go, why the heck did you put that in? Ends in a weird place, or it doesn't give you anything, but then the next year or 2 years later, the next piece comes. So you gotta start somewhere. And our ordinances allow that, but I think sometimes we're not keeping that in mind as we're looking at the development and saying, okay, this is required of your development. So I think that has changed, and it has changed probably in the last,
It's kind of like
5
what's
years.
happening on Main Avenue, right?
Right,
It's expanding. We're
Right.
Trying to get it to expand.
Yeah, so I would say it's more about the infill and redevelopment than it is
Yeah.
about kind of like,
new.
back when this plan was being created, the village still had a decent amount of properties that it was developing into new subdivision and connections, and now it's those, like I think of the Mike Van property, or not Mike Van property, but the Van property off of Main and St. Andrews over there. It's kind of more of an infill.
I think the word's fast paced. I don't know if that fits in.
We still
pretty much
develop
work
pretty
well, but-
quickly,
Yeah.
but it's just a matter of, it's not large scale green space, right? Or green acre areas, greenfield sites. It's more of the infill, the redevelopment sites. You think about the sports and entertainment district along Mike McCarthy Way, and just, the amount of conscientious discussion on connectivity between Mike McCarthy and Gore Van, and getting people to a park destination that's close by, and then getting people back over to Holmgren or to Oneida Street.
Yeah.
Just those conversations
But
about.
we've been pretty much given an opportunity to at least give input. I mean, in the past, they weren't.
Yeah.
You were here a long time.
Yeah.
I'm wondering most of us.
Yeah, I think a lot of the development is, instead of wide scale, it's like one property or maybe two properties. And when the owners or the developers of those properties come in, by the time it gets to the village board, they have a pretty good idea of what they want to do. So we don't have that chance to be on the ground level of planning. They come in, here's the plan, here's what they want to do. They budgeted it, they figured it out, and they're just
Yeah,
asking
10 years
permission
later.
to do that.
Yep.
And it's hard to get input when it's that far into the process.
But don't they have the guidelines
They do.
from Aaron that
Yeah, Aaron
that
works
they have
with
to
them.
abide by?
Yep. Yep.
So we have
Absolutely.
an opportunity to,
So ordinances in place, yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, within your ordinances, you have the minimum standards. And certainly, and this is, a decision that the board has to make, is you might have minimum standards that have to be adhered to, right? They gotta have a bike rack, has to meet a certain design standard for that bike rack. Certainly they have to have certain accessibility standards to meet ADA requirements. But where it comes into is more of that subjective area, where you look at it from plan to plan, you're like, well, it would really make sense if you ran a sidewalk from here to here, right? Because we'll just pick on the quick low-hanging fruit, like McCarthy Way, some of the developments there. There have been previous conversations about trying to put a connection between Mike McCarthy and Gore Van. Or as a good example, the hotel project that was proposed on Oneida Street, and getting that connectivity from the frontage of the hotel on Oneida Street over to Marvell or Element, one of those two, and just looking at it from a pedestrian flow standard, right? This committee has always viewed it differently than maybe site plan review. Site plan review is very focused on the building aspect of the site. You're more focused on the flow of pedestrian travel within the site. And the standards are pretty simple, right? You just have to meet the accessibility standards, and you have to meet the bike rack standards. As long as they've met those two things, the village doesn't have a footing to say, well, you need to add this additional walkway, or you need to add this additional trail. You don't have that. So if you had those standards that are agreeable, that, you know, politically the board is supportive of, then you incorporate those into the ordinance. So then you end up getting the design you want, right? Because if you don't have it in your code, then the developer just says, well, it's not required, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, we can't say no to it. There has to be a standard that they have to adhere to, and that standard has to be codified in the ordinances.
So there is no such thing as putting in the code that we have an opportunity to review the, whatever they're applying for, right? As a bicycle and pedestrian committee
You could,
prior to the approval of the.
but then you would still have to create the standard of which they have to adhere to. So
I see what you're
it couldn't
saying, yeah.
necessarily be subjective.
Just
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, it's gotta satisfy Dale.
Yeah.
Dale
Gotcha.
has got a moving target, and he can choose whatever he wants. It's gotta be. Really what you're doing is, in site plan review is the same way, is there's a specific standard that they have to adhere to. The technical aspects of the site plan review committee is just confirming that the developer adheres to that standard. So you should create the standard, and then this group, in theory, would be the one that validates and verifies that they met the standard that's been codified.
Understood.
So I would have a suggestion, since we just saw this today, and we all haven't had a chance to really think about it, maybe we could bring that back to our next meeting. Everyone has a chance to look at it, and definitely if you can get this out to us. And think of the plan we have now, think of all the things that came through on the survey, and all the things that, you know, we kind of want to do as a committee, and then we could discuss at our next meeting, and see if, you know,
What's
some
our
of this is,
deadline date?
and maybe
What do
there's
we-
some other things that come up that people are thinking of too that
Yeah.
are important.
So I'll just tie into
Your time.
that before
Yeah.
getting. So yeah, this was the other thing taken straight from the existing plan, top opportunities. So that would be, again, kind of the other question I think that you're alluding to is, you know, are there new things or are these all still valid?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess then maybe getting to your timing question.
Yeah.
So the next, when would the next meeting,
August.
or when's the August meeting?
What's the date on that?
August 11th would be our next meeting.
Yeah, so so in general, kind of what I was thinking for next steps, or what kind of schedule-wise for the next steps would be to update goals and objectives and update existing conditions in the plan. And I think this might work well to do that, you know, if maybe what we do next is, you know, if everyone takes some time or is able to take a little bit of time as far as the opportunities and top issues go, and then maybe even, so I don't have it up here, but just because there's a lot of extra text, but in the existing plan, so in chapter 5 of the existing plan, there's the goals, objectives, and policies. And so maybe what would be good, well, what would help, I think next steps is kind of getting to these and updating them, but I don't know if we could do that kind of in conjunction with the top issues and top opportunities. So maybe our next meeting, you know, if everyone would be able to look at between the opportunities and issues, and then just look at the goals and objectives. And maybe even more so than the objectives is just kind of focus on the goals, because I think the objectives really come from
The goals.
kind of what you define the goals to be. And so we could kind of work on those 3 things at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And I think really iron those out, and then kind of from there, that'll help inform kind of everything else that we do as far as updating the plan. So does that sound, I guess, how does that sound?
What do you think, guys? Does that sound like a plan? Everyone have time to look
Yeah,
at it?
so the current plan's online.
Yep.
And
And you guys
what is
also-
it dated now? Do you know?
2018.
That's what I thought.
What I can do is tomorrow I can message the group just as a reminder, here's your homework assignment.
Yes.
Within the plan, review the top issues and opportunities.
Yep.
And then also under chapter 5, you have examples of goals, objectives, and policies. Review all of them, because I think they're certainly related. But then at the meeting, the group will really focus on issues, opportunities, and goals. The objectives, the policies, those are ultimately going to be derived from whatever the goals end up being. And then as far as when we get to that point, Devin, sorry to get ahead of you, but at some point, staff is going to take the goals and the objectives, and they're going to craft kind of more of the context to the plan then at that point. And then your job at that point is to kind of review what Devin ultimately puts together. It says, are these things, these tasks, these action items relate to the goals that we've established, and are they consistent so that it looks the same? Because we don't want to have a task or an action item within the plan that doesn't align with a goal, right? Your focus is really kind of on the bigger picture, and Devin and his team, when they're crafting the plan, are going to really be focused on kind of those detailed
Meet
items.
those goals.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say too. So in the current plan, the top issues, opportunities, and I guess desires, I don't know, where are the desires? At least for sure the top opportunities and issues are in chapter 2 in the background information. So if you want to go to that. So chapter 2 and chapter 5 would be kind of where the two different things are for the homework. So,
Okay. Would it help at all, and I don't know if you guys do this, if we get our thoughts together individually and get them out to you before the meeting? So you can compile them, would that help? And then maybe Sue and I are saying a lot of the same things, or Jessica and I are hitting on the same things. And you guys, what is your timeline? That is that you want to do it at the meeting and not do it ahead of time and get it to Devin? And then does that help you at all?
yeah, I think I guess so. I can see it helping that way. I could also see it might, just with discussion, might
Get there anyway, okay,
yeah,
Okay.
and just doing it
at the meeting? Okay, sounds
I
good.
think just to make sure we have something. When we've done our homework,
Yes, exactly, yep.
being summer.
Okay, anything else, Devin, you want to share with us? So August meeting, then we'll get homework before, we'll bring our homework with us to the meeting, go through it, and then goals, objectives, look at chapter 2, chapter 5, review, opportunities, issues, and goals. Look at all of that and get some ideas you had, write down, type them down, whatever you want to do, and then bring them with you.
I have a question, 'cause this might be a dumb question, but, so we had this plan in the past, 2007. So in that plan, there was goals and objectives at that time, in that plan?
Yeah, I believe.
And so has anything happened with anything that's in there? Have we done anything since that was, has stuff happened?
I mean, there's been a ton of projects.
Yeah.
That have met the goals.
Okay.
Or that were part of the goals.
And there's a document in there that kind of lays out like,
Okay.
what we've done over the years and what's been accomplished. You'll be able to see that as well.
Yeah, and we don't. So it's not updated.
I could we have that spreadsheet.
Yeah, the table
We have projects.
6-1 is there's the recommendations and.
So it's like if we try to get better pipelines in there, it says this is the roads you put better pipelines, or we needed better crossing, these are the roads, so that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's kind of in this table. I believe there's not another, or this is like the main thing, right? The table 6-1, the recommendations. And so some of these things there are things that have been done and will leave this table just because they've been completed, but then there will be new things that would be added.
And a lot of them are partial completions too, like if you're talking a particular street, maybe 2 crossings were taken care of, but there's still 3 more to go. So
Gotcha.
it still might be down as uncompleted, but that doesn't mean aren't completed portions of that project that were done.
Any other questions, anybody?
No, that was good.
Yeah, and then I can send, and I guess, I don't know if it's best to just send to you the two, if I go back, this,
Whatever you sent to me, I can get it out to the.
okay, yeah, I'll send those two charts or graphics to you, just so everyone can have that also.
I just think this is so critical in this day and age. You just watch the mobility of people, whether it's a scooter or a bicycle or an electric bike. That's not gonna slow down,
Right.
not at all.
And I saw my neighbors with 3 little kids. They were on these little bitty scooters. They're all like 1, 2, and 3, and they were powered.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Yeah.
why would you let a kid that age
I
on
know.
something like that?
Yes.
Going down
Yes, yeah, it's like, no, not good.
no.
Okay, any other questions for Devin? All right, Devin, thank you. And we
Yeah,
will get our
I think-
homework. And
Yeah, and then we'll get those things kind of figured out or attempt to figure it out, and then that
That's
will
great.
kind of help with the rest of the work.
Sounds good.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, though.
Okay.
Put it all together.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Well, you're helping, so.
Yeah, I'm just a small little
Yeah,
piece
no,
of them.
no, it also.
Okay, so on to 6B, consider, discuss, act on an ordinance repealing and recreating Chapter 7 traffic and vehicles, Article 7 bicycles, motorbikes, and similar vehicles.
All right, thanks, Tracy. This item is being presented as a request from 2 board members, Trustee Krieger and Mary Kardowski. It really kind of opens up the ordinance again that we spent 18 months deliberating over. So I apologize in advance. Part of the conversation is related to twofold. One, just a general concern about safety and clarification on electric scooters. So I'll touch on that. And then in addition to that, providing an opportunity to clean up our ordinance comprehensively as it relates to bicycles, these new devices, so that it can be used as a tool to help educate not only the general public, but also our enforcement officers, our public safety department. So then when they're dealing with these issues, it is pretty well and clearly written. So with that introduction, I will cover just a couple quick things on this ordinance and then touch on some of the changes. So first and foremost, this is a repeal and recreate versus an amendment. And the reason for that is when you have substantial changes to your code of ordinances, it is sometimes easier just to repeal, basically just take the old one, crinkle it up, throw it away, and redraft it. That is especially the case when you're renumerating sections of the chapter, because you're adding elements and you want to kind of have a flow to the ordinance so it makes logic and sequential sense. So it is a repeal and recreate. With that being said, there are elements of our current code that stay the same. So even though it's a complete rewrite, there are elements that are just grabbed from our existing code and put into the language here that are consistent. So I'll cover what this code does regulate. So it is Article 7 that deals with bicycles, motorbikes, and other similar vehicles. So it does deal with bicycles, electric scooters, and the like. So first and foremost, it adds further definitions to our local code that are pulled from Wisconsin state statutes. So things like bicycles, electric bicycles, scooters, mopeds, motorbikes, electric neighborhood vehicles, all those are being defined within our code. Just to provide reference so that there is uniformity between our traffic law and state traffic law. When it comes to traffic law, uniformity reigns supreme. You don't want to have green stop signs in Hobart and orange stop signs in Howard, or blue stop signs in Ashwaubenon, right? So you want them uniform across the board. So we're really kind of adopting statutes to help us provide that uniformity. With that, as you know, we basically, in the last code amendment, we made electric bicycles basically the same as a bicycle. An electric bicycle, however, just to be clear, has a very distinct definition under state statutes. If you go online, and trust me, when I go online now, because I did so much research on this ordinance, every ad is for electric bicycles. because it's tracking me through cookies and all that
Okay.
stuff.
Yep.
Not every electric bicycle that's being advertised is or qualifies as an electric bicycle under state statutes. There's a class 1, a class 2, and a class 3 electric bicycle. What you're finding on the marketplace are bicycles that are not quite any one of those 3 classes. In general, they are probably more like a class 2 bike, but they don't qualify because the motor is too large, the speed limit is exceeding of what state statutes allow. So you see a lot of that, and that's what's being marketed, but nobody in the general public knows that. So I want to make it clear that we reference electric bicycles as it's defined under state statutes. All class electric bicycles require them to be pedal ridden, so they have to be pedaled. We are seeing what people are calling bicycles that are electrically driven motorbikes, meaning they're like a dirt bike. You don't pedal them, but they're powered by electric motor. That's a motorbike. Those are not permitted to be ridden on sidewalks or trails. They are not permitted to be ridden on the road unless they are registered with the DOT, right? And they meet DMV requirements to be ridden on the road. So they're licensed and registered vehicles, and they have to be operated by somebody that has a driver's license, just like a gas-powered motorcycle. So that's the distinct difference between those
I
two.
ask you real quick, and you maybe don't know the answer to that. So when they sell these bicycles, do they have to certify them as a certain class?
So
To sell
they are certified as a class. Now, whether or not they are being advertised as a certain class, that's different.
I see.
So the bicycles are certified, and a certain motorbike has to be certifiable to be registered with the DMV, right? So it has to meet certain things like a tail light, a headlight, all that kind of stuff has to be incorporated, turn signals, so on and so forth.
They even like have the conversion kits that kids are putting on their
Yeah.
actual bicycles now, and like all of that. Like I feel like depending where they get them from and where their parts are and all that. Like, cause I was even trying to figure that out for one for my house friends that came over with it. And I was like asking my husband, like, tell me how this bike is not gonna fall apart because this bike is like, well, because you're putting something on a bike that, to be honest,
Wasn't designed for it.
was not designed for it.
Yeah.
And that would be a
And-
modified bike, so that
Right.
wouldn't qualify as an electric
No,
bicycle
yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Right.
So now
this
it's a
thing goes
motorbike.
32 miles an hour, and I'm like, how in the who comes up with this? But yeah, I'm like trying to just keep track of all these
My
things.
12-year-old asked me if I'd be able to convert it.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that, use that as an example, and talk about the practical application of this code too
Yeah.
from an enforcement standpoint. So we'll touch on that in a moment. So real quickly, we classified electric bicycles last time as a bicycle, but we didn't clean up sections of the code as it related to the registration of bicycles. So now our code currently has, and what this ordinance would do is it would require both bicycles and electric bicycles to be registered with the village and properly tagged. Yet currently bicycles have to be, electric bicycles don't. So the idea behind it is if I have an electric bicycle, now I need to register it to be legally operated in the village. And they can remove that bicycle to make sure it meets one of the class requirements to validate whether or not the bike can be legally ridden as a bicycle.
And they would get information when they,
Correct.
whether or not.
So it's an opportunity now. Does everyone register their bicycles with the village? Absolutely not. But there is a tool and a mechanism within the code that would allow us to do that should somebody. Right? So it gets into the education piece as well.
Well, it's a good safety thing for someone if you get in an accident, a child gets an accident, doesn't have any ID with them, and they have actually registered it, like, they can check right away and see that's Joe Smith and get a hold of who's there, so it's a good safety thing as well.
I do have one problem with the registration. There's a sticker we get says City of Green Bay, unless that's changed, but the last time I registered my bike,
I think it might says Village of Ashwaubenon, but I got mine
I'll
a
look
long
into
time
that. I
ago.
guess I don't know about that.
because it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I just filled up, put it in, and it said City of Green Bay.
Oh, really? Oh, I think mine's out.
Look into So that's bicycle and electric bicycle. So registration is required. They have to be tagged, all that good stuff.
Well, how will we get this information out? Is it gonna be
Education.
So we'll have to do a variety of different education points, both in the schools general public. We haven't worked out the details as to what that looks like yet, but that's certainly a component to do seasonal type of public information campaigns to get that information out.
One thing that I noticed in the proposed regulations was that if, I don't know what the word is, if you got rid of the bicycle, you needed to notify the village. Is that really practical? Is that gonna happen, or?
It's about as practical as getting a registration.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, yeah.
But it just, obviously the responsibility is borne on the owner of the bicycle. Both register it and notify us that the bike is no longer in operation. So we know that, if we recover a bicycle, we know that whether it was stolen or misplaced or whatever, right? That's the idea.
The ideal thing would be if the insurance company forced them to be registered, they had to cover it.
Yeah.
So that's bicycles. Moving to electric scooters. If you recall the last conversation, this is really the bulk of Trustee Krieger and President Kardasky's concern, was related to electric scooters and the usage there. So under the previous code, we essentially allowed electric scooters to be ridden on any street in the village, but we disallowed them from operating on sidewalks and trails. So if you recall, we had a pretty robust debate at this committee about riding on the sidewalk with bicycles and split vote. Went to village board. They had another robust conversation about it. And there was not a unanimous vote on that topic either. But they did end up allowing bicycles to be ridden on sidewalks. So the question that Trustee Krieger and President Kardasky had is, well, if we allow bikes, why not scooters? And what regulations would you have for scooters then to maintain safety and awareness for them being ridden? So electric scooters under this code have been pulled out. They've been given their own section of the code. They, under the draft ordinance, would be allowed to be ridden on any road posted less than 30 miles per hour, or 30 miles an hour or less, excuse me, unless a bike lane is present. So if a road is posted at 35 miles per hour and there is a bike lane, they can operate on that road in the bike lane. Operation would, however, be prohibited on Oneida Street Way. So the idea there is just the volume of traffic and some of the other issues. Now, both of those streets are posted at 30 miles per hour. So you would technically be able to operate on their sidewalk. Okay? Or excuse me, you would be able to, regardless of the speed.
So why didn't you make it 25? Then they can't go on those busy streets. Unless they have a bike lane.
There was concerns from public safety. I wish they were here to kind of articulate those. There were some concerns about connectivity then. Kids would, we would have basically a code that no one would follow because they need to use some of these 30-mile-an-hour posted roads to get to school. So the idea was let's pick it up to 30 miles per hour so that there would be connectivity between the schools. That was the idea behind it.
Like North Road, for example, is 30, right?
Cormier,
Or is
Yeah.
20?
Cormier, North, I think Hanson. Yeah, there's a number of streets that aren't Oneida and Holmgren that are posted at 30 that would disallow riders from using to get to and from points and destinations.
So they could ride in the scooters on the sidewalks.
They could. So that's the other thing that they wrote in there, that sidewalk and trail use would be permissible as bicycles and electric bicycles are currently. They still have to follow the same rules as far as using proper care, using audible signals, things of that nature.
Do they have to be registered?
They do not need to be registered. So
Don't you think they should be registered so that we can give them the information on where they can ride? Because all of a sudden they're gonna know.
certainly possible. I know that state law does have some provisions in there that allows municipalities to require registration of bicycles. I'd have to review to see if they do the same for electric scooters. I don't know that they do.
Could we do it if we wanted to, even if the state does not? Can we have the electric scooters be required to have registration too?
I'd have to
Does it-
double check.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we're
It's more
trying to,
restrictive, right?
yes, right. So because state law requires uniformity in traffic law, unless it's explicitly stated in statutes that provides the provision to allow municipalities to do it, I don't know whether we can or can't. I'm not saying we can, I'm not saying we can't, I'm not saying I need to.
I would say you still have to, we have to figure out a way of educating people, because
Yeah.
you can say,
You
would
could
like
say
them
put
to
it here on
register,
your- no, you can do it.
you'll be lucky if you get
Yeah.
15%
I have lots of ideas.
to register.
So a couple other quick things. So parking scooters on roads, sidewalks, or bike lanes is not permitted. And then in addition to that, we've had a number of requests that have been denied in the past, but this would codify it. Short-term commercial rental scooters is banned. That's permitted within the statute. Moving on to motor vehicle registration. So this is unchanged. It just pulled out electric scooters and put in its own chapter, but motor vehicle registrations, mopeds, ATVs, utility vehicles, golf carts, those are all prohibited on roads, trails, sidewalks, so on and so forth. Neighborhood electric vehicles was how we defined what the state statutes define as a low-speed vehicle. So in the definitions, you'll see low-speed vehicle being defined as it is in statutes, and the neighborhood electric vehicle referring to the statute definition of low-speed vehicle. In the past, those neighborhood electric vehicles were permitted, but as a result of some experiences we had during the NFL draft and vendors using low-speed vehicles as taxi cabs, public safety had some significant concerns with that, and so they are being disallowed as permitted under statute. This is the controversial item, and I've brought it up in the past, helmet requirement. So there is a municipality in the state that has a helmet requirement for riders under 16 years of age. Yep. So basically, I took the code from Port Washington and fused it into our code. So it would be any rider under the age of 16. The idea behind this, and this is really the efforts that Port Washington uses, it's not for enforcement, it's for education. So you see a rider that looks young, riding on a bicycle or on a scooter, and they're not wearing a helmet, law enforcement now has probable cause to stop that individual and educate them on the law. Okay, I don't know of anyone that has ever actually paid a citation for the helmet law in Port Washington, because the courts have the ability to waive the citation or the violation penalty if the family can prove I bought a helmet, now they have a helmet, they're going to be encouraged to ride.
My concern would be is, you have a lot of visitors that come into Ashwaubenon. They probably don't have that kind of a regulation in their own city or village or wherever they are. So we want them to come visit, right? And not that we're necessarily going to stop them, but so is that, I don't know. I'm like the other people. I'm like, I believe you should have a helmet on. I really do. I had my own injuries. You have, right? So I know why. And the education part is great, except for the young people, especially for the young people. But then I'm like, how are you going to really how are you going to control it? We don't control people. Like, I see people walking down the street the wrong way all the time, and I'd like to stop and say, I'm on the committee, and I just want you to help you understand why it's more safe to walk against traffic, right? But I won't do it because I'm like, I've been through it where they're like, who do you think he is, right? But in your mind, you're like, common sense would tell you if you can see the vehicle coming towards you and the guy's reaching down to pick something up, and we've all done it. You look at your phone, it only takes 2 seconds, and you're 2 feet over or whatever. You'd think that just common sense would tell you that, and you would think the same thing would be with helmets, but yet parents don't want their kids to go, especially scooters.
Yes. I love having it on there, just because like then
Just
they
for the
can be, just
education part.
because then it'll stop and educate. Also, I think it also helps. I hate to say it, parents have the standing in it, so like I'll be honest, the only reason I think I have as much compliance out of our son, which is still probably only 90% if I'm being totally honest, because he showed up at the ball field about yesterday. As soon as he rode up, I'm like, what are you missing? He's like, I'm like,
Yeah.
But
Now
pretty
it's
much
law.
as they all got them, a bunch of like, it was like the text between all the moms, like, all right, I'm gonna make my kid if you make yours, because if they all wear it, then if all their moms are making them wear it, none of them feel stupid doing it because they all have to do it, so then they do it. It sounds bad, but it's just the reality of it. So if you give, but I'll be honest, there's some parents that just don't want to deal with the fight, and I get that because I've been there too. But by having that, at least you gotta like, well, deal with it. I'm not paying. You can. It's part of the rules. It's literally written down. So I feel like that also helps from that standpoint to give people the argument. But I like that the cops then can educate our kids more than anything. Like give them the opportunity to stop them, or even stop them to say like you're going faster. Like it just is an easy, justifiable reason to stop them and make sure they're being smart, so we don't become like Howard or some of the other areas that are having all the issues.
To answer Gail's question too, is that the officer still has discretion, right? Just because they stop somebody because they feel that there may have been a helmet law violation, they still have the discretion. Oh, you're from De Pere or you're from Green Bay and came over. Did you know that Ashwaubenon has a helmet law? And here's some information on why wearing a helmet is safe and important. Here you go. And so we could put together that public education piece to inform them. Then they could certainly let them
Because
know.
even a parent, you only need to see one child with a brain injury to understand why you wear a helmet. Right. Not that you couldn't have that happen anyways.
So again, controversial, but I threw it in there because if we're really focused on safety, it could be an opportunity for us to. I think it will generate enough buzz too that it might aid in our education component of. Well, did you hear Ashwaubenon passed a helmet law? So now everybody's got to wear a helmet that are under 16 years of age to operate these electric scooters. Yeah, we're concerned about your safety, and here's why it's important, right? And here's how you operate on our streets or on the sidewalk, so that you can be safely operating your device.
Did you have a chance to talk to anybody before Washington? Did you? How long have they had it in?
They've had this ordinance in effect, would have been 97, 2000, somewhere around
Somebody
that.
doesn't even remember the response they had when they first initiated it. That's so long.
Just as reference, this helmet law went into effect from one of my high school classmates was injured.
No, really?
Yeah, fell off his bicycle going down a hill, hit his head, nearly died. And so this was the result of this.
So you knew that because
late 90s, early 2000s.
I researched it to see what cities in the state of Wisconsin, and they were the only one that came up, and I'm like, well,
So that was
we're
the
going to be in
reason
the
I-
cutting edge here.
So there was a lot of buy-in in the community already because people knew the kid and like, this is terrible. If he had just worn a helmet, he would have avoided, he didn't hit anything. He fell off his bike, he hit a bump going down a hill, was going at a decent pace, hit his head on his fall, and you're right. So the helmet thing is there. The enforcement and penalties are virtually the same, with the exception of just right now our code defines the forfeiture to be $10. We would just modernize that fee to $20. I think it's still a nominal fee, but enough to get people's attention. So with that, wanted to present this to this group first, have some conversation. If the committee is agreeable to it, it certainly can be forwarded on to the village board with a recommendation. If there's additional clarification or work on this particular draft, we can hold this until a future meeting. But I think the only question that I have at this point is registration for scooters.
Is 16 with the helmet just because you feel like most kids drive by then? Or I'm just curious.
I don't know. Again, I took the exact code because I knew it was case law. It had case law challenges to it. So I took the exact wording that's in the statute or in the ordinances from Washington. I suspect that that's why, because at 16 now they're driving vehicles,
And just,
there was some easy.
yeah, makes sense.
No,
It's
it
interesting
works.
in
No, it
our
works.
neighborhood. There's a lot of kids that would be beyond 16 that are still driving those electric.
Should be old enough to know better.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be any different in a motorcycle, right? You're not required to wear a helmet, so you make
And I
that
think that
decision
might
on
be
your own.
part of it is at 16 I get a motorcycle license and I'm not required by law in the state to wear a helmet.
And that's an interesting point too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like that you guys separated them out. I mean, I think it makes sense. And honestly, I think the more we can get ahead of this stuff, again, do the education piece, the better. Because like I said, I don't want to end up like some of the municipalities that are going away from it. 'Cause to be honest, again, baseball tournament Howard last weekend, they can say they're not doing it all they want. There were probably 100 electric scooters at the moment this weekend. So like, if we're gonna make rules, make ones that are realistic. Let's do this so that the people can continue to use them, because I think it's gonna happen regardless. So let's figure out a way to do it the right way and safely. So.
Yeah, I think it's more important, we gotta figure out how to get education out there, because you just showed me that one. I watched 3 kids on Pioneer, 3 girls, 3 scooters, turn the corner to go up the street, 1 in the middle of the lane and 2 on the outsides, and there's a car coming up. And they were quick enough to get over, but I'm like, they were flying.
Yeah, the issue
It's
to
just
this
days.
morning, I was walking out my front porch, I hear this coming, and here they come running right down the runway on the street, 2 kids on an electric scooter.
And they're not wearing helmets.
So I was gonna have, oh no, there
And
was no
why,
helmets.
why do the parents allow this?
There's no helmets, there's no lights on scooters.
try.
there's no-
Yeah, you try, and then they show up at the ball field without it, and then you make them put it back in your vehicle and ride home with you.
So I'm in agreement with it.
Yeah, and
And it's
you know, if it conforms to the state law, it's, somebody else has done the research and done the wording and uniformity.
It may help parents.
I think
No,
it
no,
is.
just like you said. I think it's,
I do think there is a lot of that, but some people just don't play with the kids, and all the kids aren't doing it.
Well, everybody's doing it, why would I tell
Right.
my kid not?
Exactly, and
Yeah.
people, parents, you pick your battles nowadays, and like I said, I was actually happy that our kid, the text came up before my kid even had one, that I was like, oh, easy, all his friends already have to. I didn't have, like, so he didn't fight me on it at all, which I think he probably would have had it been the other way, so. I think doing that education, and if we do it at the schools and send it out to parents, and honestly with the sports teams, like again, football starting, guarantee you, the field's gonna be filled with them. If we can talk to the coaches and again, have them, like, if you have them telling the kids they have to do it, to be honest, they're gonna listen to that. They're gonna listen to their football coach over their parent, let's be honest. So if we can get buy-in from them, just get the education out there, I think it'll be good. But I think, like you said, the helmet thing also brings attention to all of this, because it's something different, so. I think that was a good point.
we really don't have to vote to approve anything, do we? Because the board put this together.
Yeah, but I think it's important that this group
To agree?
would have a recommendation.
Yeah.
If it's possible, I think that's good.
Before we go too far, I just have a couple things on this, you guys, I wanted to just share with you. We just talked about the survey that was done for our updating our bicycle pedestrian plan. The number one for the pedestrians that they wanted for improvements in their community was separation for pedestrians from bicycles and motorists. Okay. The number 2 for our bicyclists was again, separation from pedestrians and motorists. So now with this, we're allowing electric scooters on the sidewalk. That's not separating them from our pedestrians. And we already allow the bikes on it, so bikes are on there. So our survey has said, we want separate spaces because we feel safer. And now we're putting an ordinance in, not only including bicycles, we're putting electric scooters on there as well. The other concern I have is prohibiting electric scooters on Oneida and Home Grid. They're gonna be out there. They're a lot safer if they're on the road than they are on the sidewalk, because you have massive driveways all along there. People are coming in and out, and they're not watching. You're more visible on the road. And you guys all
Scooters
know.
don't have lights and reflectors. That's why
I
they're
know.
not safe on the busy roads as
Well,
opposed to
some,
bike.
yeah, and bikes sometimes are out there without lights or reflectors as well.
But they're up higher.
And you guys know I don't support bikes and the electric on the sidewalk. I've made that clear in the past, and that's fine. But one of the things that state statute does say that maybe we could, if you guys are gonna vote for allowing those on the sidewalk, state statute, and this is just in regard to crosswalks. So when you are on a bicycle or you're on an electric scooter and you're going in the crosswalk, you have to ride that device in a manner which is consistent with the safe use of the crosswalk by pedestrians. So in other words, you have to go the speed of a pedestrian when you're going through that crosswalk if you're on a bike and electric scooter. What if we added to this ordinance the same verbiage for on the sidewalk? So when you're on the sidewalk with your electric scooter and you're on the sidewalk with your bike, you have to travel in a manner consistent with the safe use of that sidewalk by a pedestrian. And you're still gonna have people flying on it. But at least gives our law enforcement officers ability to stop Sue because she's going 30 on the sidewalk on her electric scooter. She's gonna pick off a pedestrian. She's gonna get hit by a car, whatever the case may be. So I just think adding that verbiage makes it maybe a little bit safer, a little bit better. And it's creating, again, some awareness with those users that are out there saying, hey, you know, I'm out here walking. I don't want the scooter coming up behind me at 30, take me out. So that would be my recommendation on that. The other thing, you know, the helmet thing, I don't have a problem with that. It's probable cause for an officer to stop that person and talk to them and give them the information about helmets, and maybe they're going too fast or whatever, so talk to them about what they're doing. But I also think it's really important for our law enforcement officers to understand what are the biggest risks for our pedestrians that a motorist does that a pedestrian does. What are the biggest risks for our bicyclists that they do and that a motorist does that makes the biggest risk for pedestrians? And there is a document, Enforcement for Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety, and it lists all the state statutes for motorists. Like, for instance, bicyclists, let's give the biggest risk for a bicyclist is riding facing traffic. So bicyclist that's riding facing traffic has the biggest risk to get hit by a car. A pedestrian, someone mentioned it before, a pedestrian walking with traffic, that is their biggest risk to get hit. So if a law enforcement officer sees Kyle riding his bike and Kyle's going counterflow, I would love to see that officer stop Kyle and say, Kyle, you're supposed to ride with traffic on that. Or if Sue's walking with traffic, stopping Sue and telling her. So I think that's part of our education and enforcement tie together, that our law enforcement officers understand the biggest risk to pedestrians and bicyclists, because really 80% of pedestrian bicycle crashes with motor vehicles involve the following violations, and they're all listed here. And these are violations that motorists do, that pedestrians do, and that bicyclists do, that result in crashes between them. So it's a way to educate our law enforcement officers and help them to be out there looking around and saying, hey, that's not a safe thing they're doing. Or that motorist, the biggest risk for an adult bicyclist from a motorist is a left turning vehicle. So you're going to the intersection, you have the right of way, and that left turning motorist cuts you off, it goes right into you. And then the law enforcement officer knowing that and seeing that and going, hey, I'm going to pull that guy over. He almost hit that bicyclist, and I'm going to talk to him about that. So I think there's ways that besides, you know, just the helmet thing, which I'm fine with, that we can start really hitting some of these things that are problems with our kids. And they're all laid out. All the things that people do that cause them the biggest danger, whether it's a motorist, a bicyclist, or a pedestrian.
The only question I have, Tracy, is when I read it and they talked about separation, I gathered they wanted separation from traffic. Vehicles,
But they do say,
not on the sidewalk. I'm not saying you don't want
Right.
separation on the sidewalk. I'm saying that number one priority or that number two, whatever it was, I read that as separation because we don't really have that, right? We have, you know, we don't
right,
really
which,
have,
I mean, either.
and we get by with it.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that's
Well, and the
part of,
question was, it does say pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. It includes all three in what was number one. So they're saying, in my opinion, and maybe Devin could weigh in on that, but that they want a separate facility. So pedestrian doesn't want to be on the sidewalk where there's bicycles and scooters cruising by them all the time. Is what I read that to be.
I mean, you're saying that I was under the walking people said that?
That's what I'm assuming from where the question was at and how it was stated on there, that they're concerned about being on the sidewalk and having bicycles.
I was thinking they were more concerned because we don't have enough sidewalks for them
We
to
don't.
be concerned about that.
We don't.
I read it
People
more
walking
as
on the
they're
street too.
dealing with traffic.
Right.
That's just my opinion. I don't know that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer not to have bicyclists or scooters on the sidewalk, but in some cases, I think it's safer to have some of them on the sidewalk than have them on the street, especially streets with parked cars. You know, so for the safety for the greatest number of people, it might be better to let those scooters on the sidewalk. Now, I believe bicycles are supposed to yield to pedestrians, so scooters should be the same.
Well, that's why, I mean, you have in here with the like sidewalk or trailers are permitted, but it says with proper care, so I mean, like, to me, again, I feel like that's the like, you're supposed to be yielding, you're not, they should be going.
You should be
slower
yielding, you
and
should be
those
going
things,
slower.
So where you get off, here comes people walking, you get off the sidewalk and you get back
I
out.
do agree with you is how do we, if we can, it's not like the officers don't have nothing to do. But there are opportunities, because I think back when I told you the story about Darla walking down Pioneer, and she's on the left-hand side, walking against traffic.
Yep.
And a scooter comes flying by her going the wrong way.
Yep. Yep.
And she couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
Because she's got earbuds in, right? And he was flying.
Yep.
And it scared her.
Oh, yeah.
It should scare her.
Because they do, they go.
Yeah, because she could have moved. He wouldn't know if she's gonna move a little bit to the right or to the
Yeah.
left or whatever.
Yep.
So it really is education, but how do you,
Well, and the term, Jessica, like you said, using due care,
Mhm.
what does that mean to people? What does that mean to
Yeah,
you? What does that
due
mean to
care.
me? That's very vague. And I think the way they're stated, the state statute says for crosswalks, consistent with the speed of a pedestrian.
so you're
It's
just
very
saying,
clear. It's like
follow
people
it.
would understand that a pedestrian's not going 30 miles an hour.
I think the only hard part with that is that's so slow that again.
Yeah, how you
then
gonna do that?
No one's gonna ride a bike or ride a scooter that slow, so
Scooter
then
will
again.
You can't do it, tip
Right,
over the.
so then
thingy
we're back
bikes.
to having rules that we have no intent to enforce, which again, that's the thing I
Right.
don't agree with. If we're gonna write the rule, we should be ready to enforce it.
So what, how does it?
I mean, I like the idea of having, if you want it clear, but I think saying they're gonna ride a bike or a scooter at the speed someone's walking, I don't think anyone's gonna, it's like you said, they'll tip over.
E-bikes are good at it.
How the statutes read, it's 346-24.
Yeah.
Talks about traffic yield, vehicular traffic yielding to whether it be a pedestrian, person with a mobility device, riding a bicycle, electric scooter, the devices that we've called out. And it says for those individuals crossing in a manner which is consistent with the safe use of a crosswalk by a pedestrian, looking up some case law, I think what the intent of that statute is that a pedestrian is not darting out into traffic, right? They're waiting for a walk signal, they're waiting for a green light, they're waiting for traffic to have cleared their traffic anyway that's approaching the intersection in a safe manner. So a pedestrian, we'll talk about it, maybe we'll talk about it. For a safe crossing, if I'm a pedestrian looking to cross and there's a vehicle entering the intersection, let's say it's an unsignalized intersection, I don't have a right to just dart out in traffic. I have to wait for that traffic to stop before I begin to cross. I think that's what from what I'm seeing anyway, that's what they're trying to say is that a pedestrian isn't just darting out there. So they don't want a bicyclist just darting out there. You have to also stop for a moment, make sure that you have the right to cross, right? So if it's at a signalized intersection, you have the signal to cross, you have a green light, and there's no one that is immediately entering the area and they have a safe ability to come to a yield or a stop position, right? So I think that's what they're intending by that language. You're looking left, you're looking right, you're looking left again, and you're kind of crossing them. It does not, unfortunately, talk about traveling at a speed of pedestrian. It's just safe use in a manner. I think when we talked about it with public safety, using due care or being cautious on riding on the sidewalks, if you see somebody riding down the sidewalk on one of these scooters and they're traveling pretty quick, let's say at 18 miles an hour, because I think some of these scooters can travel that quickly or faster. At 18 miles an hour, that appears very fast at a pedestrian level, right? Because you're walking at a 3 mile an hour pace.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very fast. That's not exercising due caution if you're zooming past them with a foot separation between them at 18 versus 3 miles per hour. So I think if it's witnessed, obviously a law enforcement can work towards correcting that behavior. But let's say there's no one on the sidewalk and somebody's riding down the sidewalk on one of the scooters at 18 miles an hour. Do we care? I'm just asking that question, and that's the question that public safety has is, does it matter then? Would we rather have them on the road where there's a high volume of traffic, or should we separate that user on that scooter and put them on the sidewalk? That's the question that public safety had posed when we were talking through this ordinance.
I'm more concerned with what you previously stated, because let's take an example of Oneida Street, and this has happened as well. Person's on the bicycle, then on the sidewalk, you're making a right turn, you have the right of way, right? Because you have a light, but they're flying, you don't see them. They're required to stop, they probably don't know, right? That's where they have to abide, just like somebody walking that has to step on that curb or at least motion that they're going to be crossing, and not even there, because in that case, they didn't have the right of way, they had people on Oneida had the green.
To go back to Tracy's earlier argument, however, when you have a bicycle or a scooter operating at a fast pace on a sidewalk or trail with a lot of driveway crossings, and they're going counterintuitive, motorists tend to have a habit of, I'm backing out and I only have to look to my right. I don't have to look to my left because I'm only, like I'm on Oneida Street, I'm backing out on Oneida Street. I'm only worried about one direction of traffic. I'm looking to my right. And at the end of the day, there's a bicyclist or scooter that comes and clips the rear end of my car as I'm backing out. So I'm not looking to argue the point that that's a concern, right? That is a legitimate concern. It does create a safety risk. The thought though is that exercising due care by that operator of that scooter? I would argue it's not.
Right.
You should be operating at the flow of pedestrian travel. You should be operating at a safe speed, especially within a congested area. The alternative is to say no on the sidewalks at all, or it's to say what do we deem due care and caution, right? And how do we then use that as a tool to educate or enforce, depending on the circumstance.
Any other comments or questions, anybody? Otherwise, if someone wants to make a motion in regard to the new ordinance.
I make a motion that we go with the recommendations here.
Motion by Sue to approve the ordinance as shown. I'll second. Second by Jessica. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, next one. Consider, discuss, act on a request for pedestrian accommodations at the intersection of Bridge Road and Sandra. Someone brought this up at our last meeting, and I don't remember who the heck it was. But so this is on there. There's some concerns with people crossing to the PAC and safely crossing Bridge Road.
So the question, go ahead.
Oh, I would say, I know,
Did you bring it up, Jessica?
yeah, okay, because I had, after the, was it 8th grade graduation, maybe? Trying to remember what thing, we're at the PAC for lots of stuff. Like when there's the parking of both sides of the road there, which is needed in order for lots of events that go on there, as well as just even school in the mornings. And like if you're doing drop off there are cars there. A lot of people aren't going, especially if there's an event at the PAC and they're parking back here, they're not going all the way up to where there may even be a crossing guard up where it turns on to actual, what is it? Not Anderson, what's the road? Willard, thank you. So bringing up like, should there be some type of crosswalk or like a light that can flash something, because there are a lot of people going back and forth for events at the PAC right there. And then they are kind of just running out traffic and with cars being parked on both sides of the road, by the time they're coming outside of that car, they're in the road. So
I was going to check and I didn't have a chance to, but Brian, maybe you would be aware, know this. Is there no parking on some of the curb area?
there is yellow back on the curb.
There's, okay,
A little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was expanded, if that would help at all, Jessica, to pull.
I think they struggle with the parking in that area.
Yeah.
Too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's part of the issue. They already, I think, struggle to have enough parking in that area too.
I know this is kind of a hot button topic, but I believe it was Tom Rowling that I was talking to a couple weeks ago, and he had some very strong opinionated ideas on this, and he's not here. And so I would suggest moving forward, a decision not be made, because I really think we need to hear public.
Because I do kids cross there now and do what's public safety spots?
His primary driver was it's within a school zone.
Yep.
So if you put a marked crosswalk in there, do we have an obligation then to staff a crossing guard during that time? And they're trying to direct them up to
Willard.
Yep.
so if you have that crossing there, does that create issues? And then if you do put a crossing guard there, school let in, let out times and the route of travel for pickup and drop off would get impacted. And so they want to kind of keep that
through there already.
free flowing. So
Well, that would be my question. You're going to put it in here. You have the two questions basically. If it have to be ADA accessible, and maybe Brian can, but that would be something we need to know as well. Do we have to put, curb?
Yeah, you got to
That's in
install
there.
curb ramps. There's not curb ramps
You
there.
wouldn't have to install them.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
And then the other question is, would the school or would the village, whoever's in, have to provide crossing guards? So maybe if Tom or someone could weigh in on those at the next meeting, and we can talk about it further then and see what public safety has to say about it. But maybe Brian, you could look a little more at the what's marked for no parking and see if you think it should go back a little further or some other areas or whatever the case may be.
They're gonna say they can't find crossing guards.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
They keep asking Darla to come back all the
Do they?
time.
So-
That's
All the
a valid
time.
thing. You're
All
gonna
the
keep right
time.
there, that makes sense.
So part of this is a little bit of education too, and it's a
Yeah.
topic at the end here. This is technically an unmarked crosswalk. So motors are required by law to yield
Yes.
to people waiting to cross that street, whether the road is marked or not.
Yeah.
So I suspect that if we even mark the crosswalk, would we see an increase in traffic yielding to pedestrians?
No.
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
By a small
I feel like you
margin.
need something flashing, and even at that, it doesn't
Mhm.
always work. But I feel like just, to be honest.
Yeah, so I,
Yeah.
But isn't the intersection not a good spot for an RRFP? Isn't that part of if those mid-block, isn't that their preferred?
yeah, preferred, but if there's there's control on Sandra and then there's control on the entrance into the PAC. So I mean, you have it's a controlled intersection to a degree. So you wouldn't necessarily need to put one on Sandra, let's say, but obviously crossing Ridge there, you could. Again, it's, we can certainly kind of talk through that as to what that would need.
But is this mostly a problem when events are going on
That's what I
only?
just asked.
And that's
Events
normally
and
at
then
night.
School.
In school too?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think it's a problem in schools going on.
Yeah, with the start of the day and the end of the day.
I do think there are kids who don't buy parking passes who park on that. I've seen them
Sandra.
like going
Over and-
across. Yes, they like the street on,
But how many of them
Anderson,
are
but
trying
they
to walk
also have-
across?
So what they should do is walk up Ridge
Yeah.
to Willard and cross
Yes.
there.
Well,
Yeah,
because
you don't.
my point is if it's mostly when there's events going on, probably the people that are almost hitting people are people that are waiting for parties fun, whether you have a crosswalk or walk. Not, are they gonna even stop because they're so intent on getting to their
Trying to
event?
find their stuff.
Mhm.
As opposed to this isn't a problem all day long, when
Yeah.
people would maybe pay more attention. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because then you got football games on the other road. What happens
Yeah,
when
right.
those go on? I mean,
Yeah. I think it's definitely on Saturdays and Sundays when, there's stuff like swim meets going on and PAC stuff,
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
basketball game, like sports stuff, that's kind of pretty much all day Saturday and Sunday. And then I think it is at nights and things like that, like you said. It was someone that brought the concern to me to bring it to the committee.
Yeah.
So and I see it when I go to the stuff, but I don't know what the right answer is for it either, because again, the crossing guard thing makes total sense to me. I know the flow of traffic in the morning is already a nightmare, so I totally get how they're worried about that affecting flow of that more too. I don't know what the right answer necessarily is, but I can also definitely see there's lots of people going across for events and then kids in the morning darting across, but
But
It's not the only area that
kids
we have
actually
issues
park
with.
on those streets during school.
they park down here. Well, and honestly, I'd imagine it's similar to the same stuff we deal with on Anderson Drive with the Oaks. The later in the school year it goes, the more kids get their license,
true,
and all of a
yeah.
sudden the streets just fill up more and more, because by the start of the year,
yeah.
we never have issues in front of the Oaks.
That
By the
neighborhood-
end of the year, our
Yeah.
parking lot's full of people in high school, and I'm telling them they can't park
The
there.
neighborhood
So,
can't be very happy to see all that. every day.
yeah,
Wow.
The other, we should probably maybe even have.
Bigger
Kate,
parking
is that
lot.
Kate, from the PAC, maybe talk to her too, because I know
Yeah.
she has mentioned to me about the concern about parking and not having enough and people get kind of mad and stuff. So maybe get her input on it too, see what her thoughts are.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
know,
green
I talked
space
to
actually
her.
open there? That shows it.
That's a soccer deal, isn't it?
Uh,
Used to be a soccer, now it's park stormwater.
Or is it stormwater? Oh, okay.
Oh, it's storm.
So any other questions or things that we want to check, otherwise it could be brought back in the August meeting?
Yeah.
Check with public safety again, see what their thoughts are on it. Ryan, any way in that you have on it as well, please?
I mean, you definitely could increase some of the, yellow marking at the intersection, to kind of open up that vision triangle, but I mean, people are still gonna cross there, but it maybe would help with just seeing.
Yeah, maybe take away 4 spots.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah.
correct.
Right, then
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be yelled at for that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm getting yelled at every way. I don't
Yeah,
know what you guys
pretty-
decide.
pretty
Yeah,
well.
I mean, I say do that.
Yeah. But okay, is that something that you guys have to come back in August? and
Carpool.
See if, yeah, carpool. Right there, walk there. There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
All right, anything else on that? Anybody wants to bring back some, I'll put it on your list to come back in August, please.
So what are we going to do in August?
Get some input from public safety, get, talk to
That's the
PAC.
goal.
Brian already kind of gave his input. Brian, anything else you can think of that would be great just to bring back or if there's anything else?
Nothing that's low hanging fruit. That's
Okay.
pretty much
Yeah, I
all
would say
low-hanging
that
fruit.
the yellow markings for public safety, and from the PAC, they're gonna say, yeah, we absolutely need more parking. Or is the village willing to pay for it?
Yep.
That's that answer.
Yeah.
So you get the answer from the PAC.
Right.
It's more or less public safety kind of giving you an update
Yeah.
as to
What their thoughts
what their
are.
concerns are.
PAC is just concerned because there's always multiple events going on during many of their performances and shows.
Oh.
Yes.
And the PAC staff get concerns from people attending the shows that it was difficult for them to find parking spots.
Sure.
And that, absolutely true. So, but I don't know if a crosswalk is gonna solve that issue.
Parking
No,
garage.
it's two separate.
For some reason, they like that street more than they like to park in the front of school, even though that's depending on how far down that street they are. Parking in the front of school is probably the same walking distance.
Well, or maybe they
but
don't, maybe they don't know that they can, because I mean, a lot of times I've done stuff where for swim, and they're like, how do I get to the swim, to the pool?
Well, true, you can't pull in right here.
Yes.
It only is an out right
You
there.
can, no, you can pull in right there.
No, I'm here now. They changed the arrow.
They
You
changed
can
it?
only come out this way.
Yeah, it's only out.
Because I always used to be
Yeah,
able to pull
you
in
used to be
there.
able to pull in
Okay.
there. Now
I
it's 2 lanes
apologize.
out. No, I still done it. That's how I know.
Maybe I was gonna say, maybe I did just pull
I
in
went
there.
to drop Olive off for musical and Paul very nicely told me I was driving the wrong way and then I looked at the arrows and I was like, I sure am.
Yeah, because the drop off, I also get that the drop off at the PAC is not great. There's not like a nice,
Flow through there.
yes, like even if you look at the community center, for example, like there's a nice
Nice
pull in and a drop,
Yes.
you know, I don't know
Maybe
if
better
that's part of
signage.
it.
More parking, maybe better signage, so
Yeah.
people don't park
They
on
just
the
put
road.
all the new signage up there too. That looks,
Yeah.
nice, but.
I know we looked into it at one point when we were talking about the events out here on the street with the rockers, and I know we couldn't find it. But I don't know if we looked into that again, but there was I can't remember even what city it was in now. Was it Nashville or Minneapolis? One of the two. But they literally had a yellow flashing sign that said event going on, watch for pedestrians.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we talked about that out here.
Oh,
I don't know if we could try to research for that again, because I still just think something like that brings attention, that it only
Yeah.
flashes when school's on, when an event's going. That's there's gonna be people crossing and running on the roads, just be aware as a driver.
Yeah.
And had I realized that it would be so hard to find something like that, I would have totally been the driver that took out my phone and took a picture. But I still feel like even something I don't know, just bringing attention that as you're coming through, there's going to be people crossing. Same thing over here. We're not going to change the habit of it. There's never going to be a perfect solution for any of these. But again, little things we can do to just make people be more aware and be as safe as they possibly can.
Mhm.
I'm all for. So I'll search those up again too and see if I can find them.
Yeah, get a picture, Ken,
As long as it's
Yeah.
signed about it.
and see if they're legal in
Yeah,
Wisconsin. right?
Yeah, they're probably not. And
Probably
honestly,
not, yeah.
like I said, I could not find it. I bet you any money some the company that held the concerts probably just put a sign up and no one ever said anything about it, would be my guess.
That's what I was gonna say. I wonder who owned it. Was
Yeah.
it actually owned by
But
the
it probably
event
wasn't-
planner or
it
the
honestly-
municipality?
It probably wasn't even a municipality. It probably was just the concert
Right,
place that
yep.
put a sign up that said it. But I'm like, it worked. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
you see a flashing light that's events going on, watch for park pedestrians, you slow down. So maybe we should put one up and see how long it takes for Brian to yell at me to take it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
I should be able to order that on Etsy, right?
Yeah. Some fans are good, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come back with that in August with some more input from public safety on that one. D is receive, accept public works project updates. Brian, it's you.
Yeah, so I typed up a real quick report here. If you guys do have any detailed questions about it, by all means ask. If not, I can cover the items. Glory Road culvert replacement. That project's scheduled to start in the middle of August. That culvert is very large. The trail essentially will be closed one block north of it at Ashwaubenon Street, one block south at Contract Drive. We'll have signs, type 3 barricades, which are the 8-foot wide barricades that'll just let people know that the trail is closed. Ultimately, you're just gonna have to either go around the block or turn around and go back the other way. Cormier and Holmgren rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So if you drove down Holmgren south of here today or on Cormier east of Holmgren, you'll notice that Board Construction is out there working on it. They're doing the removals. They'll be out there this evening working on profile, cutting the curb head, hopefully pouring the bases tomorrow. With that, I do want to touch on, I know there was a strong desire to add additional upgrades to that intersection, including additional signage, yield bar, and block style crosswalk pavement marking. That was motion to continue with the original design, which does not include those items at the village board meeting. So ultimately, we're sticking with the original design. A while back, I think it was back in May, at the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, we had spoken about our various pedestrian projects, one being the main app connection, so that would be from Ridge Road to the east into the pier. There was a concern expressed about a 2-foot lateral clearance in between the back of either trail or sidewalk and the retaining walls. So currently I made the designer aware of that. They're currently working on redesigning and pushing those walls back. The one thing to be aware of is we are tying into the existing sidewalk that's on the existing bridge on Main Ave on the south side. That sidewalk's only about 4 feet 9 inches wide, and there is a parapet wall with a railing there. So we are, of course, getting rid of the hazard on our sidewalk and trail portion, but the hazard is still going to continue to exist on the bridge. Only way really around that is either to add another girder to that bridge or build our own facility over the top of the Ashwaubenon Creek, which is probably going to be about $1 million or so. So ultimately, you're going to still kind of get to that bottleneck. It is somewhat normal on bridges to have that, that the railing's there. I mean, unfortunately, there's only so many things you can do, whether it's getting off from your bike and walking, or just taking that, additional level of consciousness as to, you're kind of in a limited width area. The county is looking at redecking that bridge, hopefully in 2028. That's something that I'll keep in my mind when I'm talking with the highway commissioner. If there is opportunity to make that sidewalk wider, sometimes they are able to extend beyond the outermost girder of the bridge and cantilever out a little bit to make the sidewalk wider. Of course, that's something that we'll have to look into when they start getting ready for design of that redeck. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions you guys for Brian on any of those? The only question I had, I brought this up at the Glory Road meeting that you had, the public meeting.
Yep.
I know we can't do a detour per se for the people that are walking or biking on the trail, but could we just like laminate a map of the roads in that area so people could look at it and just then they maybe go, oh, I can go over this direction to go around and get back on the trail or something. So just kind of an information thing and just stick it on the crossbar of the barricade that you're putting up.
I mean, we ultimately could. I think most people will most likely have a smart device, so
Sandwich,
we'll
just
do
pull up your phone.
the same thing.
Yeah, that's
but
true too. Yeah.
by all means, I mean, unfortunately, what'll happen is people are going to get to the barricade, and what are they going to do? They're going to go right around it,
Yeah.
and then they're going to get the construction site, and they're going to find out, oh wow, this was actually real. Because people do not see signs, no matter what we put up for signs, no matter how much we try to help people, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's very unfortunate.
They're human.
Well, part of it is there's a lot of construction sites that need to have traffic control devices removed, and they just leave them, so people just get so complacent.
Sure.
So it's an unfortunate thing, but
I want to back up though. So when did you say they're going to do the deeper, or the bridge?
right now the county has their schedule for 2028.
Do we need to put something in here to keep track of that for us in our bicycle? Or,
Well, he said he's got.
well, I know,
Yeah.
I know that, but we're the bicycle and pedestrian
Yeah.
committee. I know he is.
Yeah, I have.
Hopefully he's still here, Brian.
I don't plan to leave, so
I think
unless
it
I
gets
get pushed
itemized
out.
as an action item on your plan.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I
That's
think
what
it
I'm
is in
thinking.
there already.
yeah, it gets itemized out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping, I know this is something that Rex and I have spoken about, as we're pushing forward on this design, we really want to get going on purchasing right away and stuff like that, to try to get this project so it's shovel ready, so we can start applying for tap grants and stuff like that, but, as we, find more complexities with the design, whether it's moving the walls back or the biggest hurdle is all the utilities in the way. We're ultimately, it's more of a complex project than one would think just to put in a sidewalk.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. So we need to get to the point where we get our right of way purchase, get the project turnkey ready, and then start applying for TAP grants, which is your transportation alternatives. So, and not saying that it'll even be funded through TAP, but I think it's a good project because it shows connectivity between two different municipalities where there is a broken link right now. But yeah, hopefully we'll get to that point.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions, anybody?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, we'll go on. Presentation discussion on Wisconsin crosswalk rules and proper use of RRFBs.
Tracy had requested this to be up here, just kind of more or less regarding the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, but I thought it would be important for us to kind of cover crosswalk rules as well, because it's all interrelated. With that being said, in your packet is the DOT's Wisconsin crosswalk rules poster. So that kind of outlines driver responsibilities and crosswalk user responsibilities. This would be a key component that we'll be using in the future for posting information, both in our newsletter, social media. I'll be working with Sarah, kind of put together a campaign of information for that, so that kind of outlines that responsibility. Tied to that is the how to use a rectangular rapid flashing beacon poster. I believe that was produced by the city of Green Bay. It is not a state DOT issued poster, but it is reflective of the manual for uniform traffic control devices guidance on how to properly use our RFBs. And then in addition to that, the city of Green Bay put together a quirky video, albeit in probably the wrong season, about how to use a rectangular rapid flashing beacon in Sarasota.
That's one of the things that people don't do. They don't push the button. So that was their thing, trying to tie it to that song that everybody knows, and hopefully turn on something in their head saying push the button. Because if you have RFBs and you don't push the button, it takes away the reason to have the RFBs. You might as well not have it there. So just again, the education and maybe doing something funny or different to maybe wake them up a little bit.
Yeah, because the hackers do that by the one there and had a crash Rob. I'm just saying, I feel like it'd get way more likes and views, and it would totally make Ashwaubenon look like there's something out there.
Not a bad idea.
So which costume are you gonna be wearing?
I'll be the filmer. I'll play the music.
You're gonna be the cheerleader.
You gotta have the Packers pushing the buttons.
Yeah,
And doing it.
there you
That's
go.
what'll get people's attention. No
Yes,
one cares who they
that's
are.
true. Yeah, that's
Get
true.
a few Packer players to
Yeah.
be on it.
Yeah,
They'll
hear
get their
about that.
ratings, you know.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, we're getting 2 new RFPs. We have one up in the stadium. We have one on Oneida Street already. So just to kind of, again, to look at there's lots of different educational things out there, like Joe said, that you can look at, and we don't have to recreate everything. There's a lot of good information out there, but it's just, again, a matter of getting it out and getting the word out to people. So
One thing I'll add to that conversation is, even though you have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon and you push the button, it does not give you a right to cross the street as a pedestrian. All it is to raise awareness to motorists that there's a pedestrian waiting to cross. So you still have to wait to make sure you have to look both ways. Our RFBs are not generally put at controlled intersections or fully controlled intersections. So it's just more or less an alerting device for motorists that there's a pedestrian waiting to cross.
Yep.
You still have a lawful obligation to confirm that you have a clear passage to cross the street. The difference between that and a hawk signal is the hawk signal actually creates a stop condition for vehicles. So You do have to still wait, just like you would at a controlled intersection, where the light turns green or the walk signal turns white for head crossing. The hawk signal creates a stoppage. This doesn't even create a yield condition, even though by law, a motorist has to yield to a pedestrian waiting to cross.
And the thing with the way those lights blink, a lot of research done, a lot of study done. Though the way they blink is supposedly a way that will draw people's eyes. So the way it flashes, and it's different than anything else. So that's one of the reasons the RFBs are fairly effective, because people do see that cognitively, they will catch that. And the other thing with the RFBs, when a 4-lane road like the ones out here, you have that second lane that's an issue. You know, maybe the guy in the right lane stops and the guy in the left buzzes by. So you have to, like Joel said, you have to be very aware, and your head has to be on a swivel when you're walking across there, especially on 4-lane roads, because there's, what is that called, Brian? That risk, there's a term for the car going by, and
I don't know.
I forgot what it's called, but there's a term for it, so.
Dead duck.
Yeah, that's about it, yes, dead duck is right, yeah.
So the one contact I'd have, or when it says make eye contact with drivers and wait, how do you make eye contact with drivers that have deflected?
I know, that's another thing.
That's something I don't like. That's
I
one of
know.
my pet peeves when
Yeah,
I'm
there's
walking.
more
yeah.
and more with the
There's more and more
windshield
of that.
being dark.
It's
Yeah,
terrible.
in the vehicle.
Like, the guy yesterday, he turned and it's like, oh, we couldn't see what you were doing.
I think our talking point on that from an education piece is make sure that you're making eye contact with them if you can, right?
Yeah,
Right.
If you, and the idea is that driver actually paying attention?
Right.
Do they see me
Yeah.
before I cross? Because if they're totally maybe not on their phone,
Exactly.
Mhm.
why I definitely do not want to cross, even if it looks like they may be slowing.
Yeah, make sure, yeah.
Should I go?
Yeah, well, and like you just said, with the dark car, you can't tell if they even see you or they're paying any attention.
I don't like that.
No.
So I don't know if you were here, I've brought this up at least 2 or 3 times, but I always take my grandkids to Titletown. We park in the stadium parking lot, and we cross there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the middle of the intersection, and the guy went right in front of me, and I told him, I said, you don't go out there till these cars are stopped. Literally stopped. I don't care if the lights are flashing, you do not cross this till you know that vehicle is stopped. And when you get halfway, you better make sure the vehicles are stopped on the opposite way.
Yeah, we've had that happen crossing there,
Yeah.
and people don't stop.
Yeah.
Because they don't, if they're from out of town, they don't expect it, it's not an intersection, they just, it's sad.
It's scary.
Okay, anything else on RFBs? Yes. One thing I just want to mention, I guess I'll put it under RFBs, and Joel sent this out to everybody, there's a Safe Streets for All grant that Brown County did get, maybe Devon's aware of it. And they're gonna hold a public meeting on July 24th from 4 to 6 at the De Pere Community Center.
Yep.
And the grant is for, and Devon, if I'm wrong on this, please correct me. Brown County got the grant, and they're gonna be looking at the communities in Brown County to help determine what kind of things they can do to make it safer for all in the community. So if you're available that night, please, head to the De Pere Community Center and provide your input, because it'll help Ashwaubenon as well.
So is that input generalized, or is it,
I
can
think
we
it is,
bring up
isn't it? It's more
specific
of a-
things like
I think
background
it's like an open house type thing. They're gonna go through stuff,
Public
but you can,
information.
yeah, and you
That's
can bring
okay.
up other things and you're looking for your input in it, whether it's in Ashwaubenon or you see things about you don't like or whatever. I mean, it's open for, I think, the whole Northeast Wisconsin, or
Actually,
Green Bay. You don't know? Okay, all right.
It's only the communities that elected to participate in the program. So there is some communities that may not have elected to
Okay.
participate in it, so that, yeah, you might not get all of
All the
Brown
communities,
County,
okay.
but the village board approved paying X number of dollars to participate in the study.
Yeah.
So it can be any road within Ashwaubenon or any participating community.
Maybe Ashland.
I would suggest that, is even though
There
you
you
can
go.
look at local
Yeah.
roads, the roads that are within kind of the metropolitan planning organization's jurisdiction, so like your Ashlands, your Packlands.
Yep.
If you focus on those, they're more likely to bubble up then for
Yeah.
additional grants.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at Marvell, like,
Yeah, it's kind of a neighborhood road, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, if you guys are available, please stop in,
Yeah,
and if you
yeah,
can
for
go
sure.
anytime between 4 and 6, it's very informal, and just provide your input, you don't have to be there for 2 hours, so.
The other thing that should be noted is the city of Green Bay and Oneida, they also have their separate SS4A grants. So, and they're being posted through a third-party consultant that's not the same as this consultant. So there is going to obviously be some overlap because part of Ashwaubenon is going to be in the county's study, and then also part of it's going to be in Oneida's study. So Steve Burr, our village engineer, he's involved with the Oneida study where I'm kind of keying up the Brown County side of things. So.
So yeah, if Oneida has open house or anything, please let us know. We'll try.
Yeah,
to
as soon as
if they do anything.
their timeline's probably about 3 weeks behind ours,
Okay.
but as we become aware of it.
Okay, that would be great. All right, so items for next agenda, we have the timeline, or Devin's coming.